Joseph, Radhik is here. If you have heard or about these celebrity weddings, if you've seen those pictures of Virat and Anushka, if you've seen pictures of Varun Dhawan and his wedding, those dreamy locations and those beautiful buttery pictures, uh, this is the man responsible for all of it, and one of the most sought after lens people, camera people, not just in India but anywhere in the world. Joseph, Radhik, what a pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thanks, Tarun. That was a very dramatic introduction for me. But thanks again, though. Yeah.
Yeah. The latest pictures that I saw were of Jasprit Bumrah's wedding.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you know this or not, but the girl is from Pune. She's a Punekar.
Yes, Sanjana.
So,
I like to call myself an ex-Punekar as well. I've lived in Pune for 3 years. Uh, that was my second job. So, in fact, I owe a lot to Pune because I wouldn't have started wedding photography if it wasn't for that city. So, there is that.
wow. So,
Yeah.
take me back to those years, please. What were you doing
Okay.
before you were doing photography? I think you're an engineer
Sure.
by education.
I am actually I'm from the south of India. I'm from Hyderabad, and back in Hyderabad, you basically have three types of people. You have engineers, you have doctors, and you have useless people, right? So that's how we grew up to be. So there was no option. My sister's a doctor. My brother and I are both engineers. But after that, I decided to disappoint my father, and I went to business school. So it's a classic, like instead of the IIT IIM trope, I was CBIT, and then I went to IIM Indore, um, and because of which I basically ended up being your typical like academic life, right? So I spent 2 years in B school. Right after which I started my first job in it's your typical B school job, by the way. I was at an FMCG called Colgate Palmolive. I was selling toothpaste. I used to be in literally the rural hinterlands of Uttar Pradesh, living in Banaras, traveling to Gorakhpur, Balia, Azamgarh. Basically, अगर आप मिर्जापुर देखे हैं, then you've known my life for that 2 years. So for me, Mirzapur is literally like a trip down memory lane, because जब जौनपुर आता है, I'm like, yeah, Jaunpur, I lived there, I know this tapri, like that it is. So anyway, so that part of my life ended, and I shifted to a very small design company in Pune called Elephant Design, based in Bavdan, right? So I spent 2 years in elephant design, and it was during that time that I realized ki, basically when you go to a B school, and especially when you've done engineering, you kind of think that life and career are like this straight path, right? Slightly angled straight path, but like it goes in one way. Like, what your ugly 15-20 saal look like, right? So but then I went to this place where everybody was like, that one guy would quit 1 month to say, I was like, okay, so what are you doing? What's the next big job? No, he's like, नहीं मैं गांव जा रहा हूँ and वहां पे जाके मैं sculpting करने वाला हूँ. I'm like, what the hell? Like, what is this life, right? It took me a long while to compute that there is a world outside the straight career path, correct? That was one big thing. The other thing is my sister got married around that time when I was at Elephant, and I googled the terms wedding photographer, India. Okay, I was always into photography. It's been a hobby for 20 years now. It's like, but you know how it is, right? Like, if you are a hobbyist photographer, you shoot three things: sunsets, flowers, and insects, right? So the three things I would shoot. Like, for 10 years I'd been doing that. But then after my sister's wedding, I basically googled, I mean, during my sister's wedding, that one Google search term made me discover this genre of wedding photography. I didn't know it existed. Globally, it was a big thing. In India, it was still non-existent in 2010, right? I think there were like three people with websites back then. Like उस समय Instagram भी था ही नहीं, right? So I it became an obsession, to be honest. For a year, I was toying around with the idea of shooting a wedding, but I never got around to it. Then one of my friends got married. I went and I shot a few photos. I put it up on a website called Flickr. उसके बाद Flickr पे वो explore पे गया था. Then a lot of people saw it. One gentleman very sweetly approached me and said, "Will you shoot my wedding?" I was like, "What?" And I said yes. And he had the most beautiful wedding in a farmhouse outside Pune. And I shot that wedding. I think 10 days later, I mean, like औकात समझो, okay? Like it's like अलग level. First wedding ever. 10 days after, Kodak came out with its first ever wedding photographer of the year awards. Okay. So I was like, it's like पूछने में क्या जाता है types ना. So I submitted, and I was nominated in 5 out of 6 categories, including wedding photographer of the year. Right. I was 25 years old, and this was all new for me, honestly. Okay. So I was blown away. I didn't know that I didn't even realize, I guess, that my photos were that good in a way, or they stood out so differently. For the next 10 months, honestly, my life turned upside down because I was shooting a wedding every weekend almost while working a full-time job in Pune. I quit, I think, end of October. And when I quit, Facebook tha, yaad hai? There is a website, okay? Then I put up a status saying Joseph Radhik, full-time photographer, okay? Somebody saw it and blogged about this thing that IIM grad becomes wedding photographer. Uh, a journalist from CNN IBN picked up the story, put it on national TV, shooting me shooting a wedding, right? And it was bizarre. I was like, what the hell? So she put that story. 15 days after quitting my job, I was on CNN IBN primetime TV. Yes.
How scandalized was your dad after when you?
Dude, oh, that's a full story. Okay, so my parents, firstly, it was like an interview with my parents. I had to justify कि basically I had to justify कि मेरे अगले 15 साल कैसे बिकने वाले हैं types. Like how am I going to earn my living, firstly? What about financial security? And more importantly, what about financial stability more than security? Like what is a 5-year plan? What's the 10-year plan? I had to do this. And I think I am forever indebted for those conversations with them, because I know of many today, 10 years later, literally 10 years later, it's very common now, Ajkal. Like wedding photography is a legit career, right? Today. But in 2010, it was not a career. It was forget career. It was like my boss, I vividly remember, said कि यार पागल है क्या, शादी का फोटोग्राफी करने वाले हो, इसलिए कुछ तो करो ना, कमर्शियल कर लो, ऐड कर लो. It was seen as like, I don't want to demean any other profession, but it is seen like a rickshaw puller kind of situation, right? And that was, I mean, in India, and labor, dignity of labor are a completely different thing altogether. But back then, being a wedding photographer was not cool. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Okay, it was not cool in 2010. Today, it's cool, right? So anyway, so back then, so here I quit. I was on CNN IBN, as I said, within 15 days, and it just went crazy. Like somebody, if you were looking at it from the outside, you'd have thought कि ये बंदे के पास बहुत अच्छा PR company है types, but it wasn't the case. I was literally running pillar to post headless chicken, because that interview happened, because of which I think 8 to 9 other interviews happened. I was on the front page of Deccan Chronicle Hyderabad. The Hindu did like, if you go back to 2010, all these articles are still there. Okay, so the Hindu, Economic Times, a whole one magazine did an interview. All this is in 30 days, huh? So in the first 6 months, Tarun, I had shot, I'll tell you, because I quit just for the record, I quit to become a wedding photographer because I genuinely loved the genre. Okay. And it was a dream that I was able to make money while doing something I love doing. Right. I mean, I loved what I was doing even as a manager, but this was alag level. I wouldn't have dreamed of this. But that was not what my first 6 months turned out to be. In the first 6 months, I shot Allu Arjun's wedding. Because they picked up from me from all these other interviews and other one talk that I had done. It was a lot of serendipity, okay? And I had shot at least 2 extremely high-profile weddings in Delhi and Bombay. So by the end of 2011, when I was shooting Ram Charan's wedding, it was crazy. It was literally crazy, because I did not anticipate the celebrity wedding. It just happened to me. Okay. So within the first 1.5 years, I realized I was in over my head. This was not a job for one person. So then we had to do a round of interviews with my parents, because this time I had to convince my brother to join. He's my elder brother. He's from XLRI. So, we have both B school pedigree. So he had to join in as my CEO, literally.
Uh,
My parents refused to agree, right? Because they're like, "Are you crazy? You know, one of you is doing crazy.
one
That's
bad
fine,
apple
right?"
in the family.
Exactly. So now he was converted to a pair of bad apples. And Joshua, my brother, is the one who founded our company called Stories.
Hmm.
Okay. So the idea of Stories is entirely his, not mine. I've always wanted to be like an individual photographer, just pursuing my craft. That was the idea. Okay. So 2012 December is when Stories was founded after my first 2 years. And in the last 10 years, as Stories completes 10 years now, okay, we've learned a lot. We have learned a lot actually about more than anything else. We've learned the art of retaining talent, because there are, I think, as Stories turns 10, there are three other photographers who joined us back then who turned 10 with it, which is mind boggling, right? Like no other, I don't know of any other creative company that, that retains talent for that long. Yeah, that's the story, yeah, in short. But I'm sure actually the biggest thing I'm missing is, in 2017 I got married, in early 2017. But in the end of 2017, somebody slightly more famous got married, Virat and Anushka. And because we were behind that, Stories went from being this, or Joseph went from being a, like, I was quite popular in the South. But we became a pan India name. Like everybody knew us. I think 2018 is when GQ awarded me that 50 most influential young Indians award, and I was also confused, just like I was in the first year when I got that first award, right? So I asked them, why are you giving this to me? And they were very clear. They're like, Joe, you have made contemporary wedding photography commonplace. So because, right, so like the average person on the road did not, a certain strata of society never even knew that wedding photography can look a certain way,
Yeah.
right? And that one photo of Virat Anushka, which everybody knows, where they're sitting at their feras, the fire is in front, they're both laughing, and Virat has crow's feet and he's got haldi on his cheeks. It's so real, na? So nobody had seen that kind of photos at celeb weddings, right? So, and because of that, I think everybody realized ki my wedding can also look like this. It need not be this posed thing, right? Of course, as I said, a certain strata of society knew it. Like the rich and the upper class definitely knew that wedding photography can look a certain way. But everybody wanted candid wedding photography after 2017, right? So the last 5 years has been a roller coaster. I think the next big splash we did was Priyanka Chopra Jonas, just immediately a year after, right? The last big splash we did was in the South. It was Nayanthara, and in Bollywood it was Vicky and Katrina's wedding in 2021 end, right? Again, lots of similarities to draw from there. Nobody knew ki shadi ho rahi ki nahi, like what is going to happen. But eventually, in the first photos came out, they're like, "Ha, we know it had to be Joe," you know. So it was very sweet. I think we went from being unexpected in 2017 to now we are the expected in 2022, right?
Um,
Yeah, that's the journey, man.
what happened? I'll tell you. I remember seeing those pictures on internet on when Virat
Hmm,
and Anushka got married, and being someone who really loves photography, my first thought was not, "Oh
hmm,
my God, they got married." No, oh my God, who took these pictures? Let's just find that out. And that's how
hmm,
I discovered you. And now, of course, like you
hmm,
said, the tables have turned in a way that if there's a celebrity wedding, I tell my friends that, you're curious about a celebrity wedding and you want to know where it's happening and probably the earliest pictures that will come out. Don't follow them.
hmm.
They might not or post it later, but
Yeah,
find Joseph on Instagram
yeah,
and follow him. He will post it, and those will be one of the best photos. Uh,
yeah.
Speaking of
Hmm,
which, celebrity weddings are very hush hush these days. They want to
correct.
keep it secret
Hmm,
for a long time. And
hmm.
what kind of brief do you get from them? How do you plan for it? And how do you tell your team? How do you guys really go about it?
So I think the biggest, I have to give a lot of credit to, I mean, the fact is that I keep reminding people that Virat and Anushka was not the first celeb wedding we shot, right? But I also have to give a lot of credit to those two for literally democratizing or making the public the idea of having a real wedding photo, archive. Like real, not honest to God. Like there's not much retouching. It's all real moments, right? So the one thing I keep telling like any client who comes along to me, any of the brides who we shoot for, I have to remind them that, this wedding might be very overwhelming, but at the end of the day, you have to enjoy it and you have to have a good time. So turn off your phone and just have fun is what I tell my regular bride, right? So, but at the end thing, Tarun, is that they're coming to us looking at celebrity wedding photos, correct? So they want to feel and look like superstars, right? On the flip side, I think our superpower is making superstars look like normal people, right? So it's the other side, right? So because it's we want to bring out the humanness of the superstar, right? Of just of because I think a wedding is the one time that you can let go and just be at your most vulnerable. Number one, right? Number two, it's a private affair. um, all of these stars live on the big screen, small screen, whatever, man, paparazzi, whatever it is, their entire lives are scrutinized by the public, correct? And this is the one time they can let go and just be like their regular lives. But
Mm.
it's also the one time, just like their regular lives, unlike their regular lives, where they're being photographed or documented, correct? So it's this weird balance of both, where they have to be just the real person they are outside of the camera view, but but it's being documented as well, correct? So I think my biggest the one thing that I do in all of the first meeting I have with any of them is to remind them ki yaar ye shadi hai, bus, it's nothing more, nothing less. It's a celebration, it's a party, you guys should have fun, okay? Do not think about how your images will look like on Instagram or social media the next day, right? We It's best to go in there with zero expectations, right? Because the more expectations you put on it, the more, for lack of a better word, contrived or created the images will be.
Mm.
That's the thing, right? So so just for our knowledge, every couple we shoot, we ask for only 10 minutes of portrait time, which is posed portraits, and the rest of the day is completely unplugged, okay? But those 10 minutes are like military 10 minutes, okay? So we need that 10 minutes to ensure that we have these classic portrait kind of situation, right? 99% of the time, I think, even at celeb weddings that you see of ours, it's the real moments that are published, okay? The portraits go out probably for like the designers or something, but more often than not, I love the fact that more and more couples that we photograph are leaning in on just celebrating the beauty of a real moment and nothing more, right? So your question actually was, what is the initial brief like? um Sometimes we meet couples weeks before the wedding, sometimes we meet them months before the wedding, okay? I'm just being honest. So it's kind of tough to keep a secret for many months, I'll tell you that. But we manage. I think one of our superpowers is keeping a secret for many, many months. And we've done this many times, so that's fine. We're totally up to that task. And during that first meeting, I think I'm just there to remind them, as I said, that it's their wedding and to just have a good time and to be present in the moment, right? That's number one. The best part about photographing a celebrity or an actor is that they're comfortable with cameras around, right? So they can ignore the cameras entirely, which is like a great thing to have, right? The other thing is, the other big thing is that we come with a lot of experience on, obviously, on all the complications of a regular Indian wedding. So that first meeting typically also goes in possibly sometimes restructuring their wedding plans to ensure that their events are happening in the best light, right? Because I am leaving so much to chance, like so much to chance, as in, because I'm telling them to just to be real and just to have fun. Because I'm doing that, I also need to balance that with ensuring that we're getting those photos in the best conditions possible. So where daylight is coming in from, direction of daylight, timing of the event, all of those things play a big part. So that's where I really come in. It's almost like I'm a consultant at that point. So we work with the planners to ensure that we are basically ensuring that things are happening in the best time possible, because the moments are not staged, but the timing is definitely something we can control, correct?
Mm.
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
It's crazy. Uh, of all that you have learned in all these years, um,
Hmm.
now not everyone can afford stories to get to shoot their wedding. But is there anything, if
Hmm.
a lot of people, this is wedding season is just beginning. and a lot of people
Hmm.
are planning to get married. Is there anything you want to suggest to all the brides and bridegrooms that they should take care
That's
of?
a that's a very nice question. My advice to any bride or groom is when they're shopping for wedding photographers, right? Look beyond Instagram is a one-line advice that I have. Okay, because the truth is Indian weddings are beautiful. Okay, it doesn't matter which strata of society you're shooting, how big or how small the wedding is. Our weddings are full of three things which are very less on the western side of things. Number one, color. We have lots of color. Okay. Number two, family. Right. Again, on the west side, we do not have such large families coming together. More than anything else, an Indian wedding is an excuse for 2 to 3 generations of families to come together once or twice in their lifetime. That's literally how it is, right? Number three is there is a lot of emotion on the fringes, not just in the center. Correct? In the center of a Western wedding, the bride and groom are always the focus. But in the
Yeah.
Indian wedding, it's that emotion is across the board, right? There's a Tauji somewhere crying away, right? And there's a Masi getting drunk at the bar. All these things happen at the same time, correct? So the fact is, if you are somebody who's shooting Indian weddings, you don't even know how to operate a camera. In your first 12 months, you will get together a portfolio good enough for Instagram. Trust me. Okay, no matter what you do, you're a monkey with a camera will get you the opportunity is right there. Okay, and it's the perfect way to make great photos, right? The reason why I say look beyond Instagram is because Instagram is probably, like, for stories, it is 0.01% of what we shoot. Okay, in the last 2 years, since 2021, we have probably shared only 30 posts to Instagram. That's how little we post, right? But we've shot more than I think we've shot about 80 weddings in that time.
Yeah.
Okay, the reason why I say look beyond Instagram is I would love for couples to look at what the photographer shoots at each event, number one. Number two, what the photographer shoots of the family at each event, because that is very, very important. One of the biggest lessons I learned from my wedding was uh, as a groom, I don't care about photos of me. I mean, yes, I'm not that low narcissistic also, but like 20-30 photos to banta hai yaar at an
Oh,
event, but usse उससे ज्यादा जरूरत नहीं है. आई वॉन्ट टू सी कि क्या हो रहा है at the wedding which I could not see. Correct? I want that. Those are my memories of the event, and I really want brides and grooms to focus on that. How good are photographers at capturing your family and their moments, right? And what does the final wedding album look like? None of these questions are on Instagram because they are not conducive to social media. Let me put it that way,
yeah.
right? As a third party, as a stranger, why would you share photos of family?
Right.
Correct? So that's why these photos never get in. I can confidently tell you कि my best photos which are relevant to a couple, right? To the more than 300 odd couples I've shot over the last 10 years, right? The best photos are not the photos that I've shared to Instagram. To them, their most memorable images are the ones that sit on their walls. Or somebody's passed away and I actually made a photo of them with them, because 10 years is a long time, right? So now I'm actually congratulating brides and grooms on their 10th wedding anniversary, on their 11th wedding anniversary, which is bizarre for me, right? And in that time, I've seen the longevity of what we do as a company and what I do as a photographer. Okay, so that's my big advice. Look beyond Instagram. That's the only thing I have. Yeah.
Right now, if you ask me, I'm thinking of that guy in Pune who
Hmm.
was the first guy to ask you to shoot a wedding. Um,
Hmm.
and he must be really boasting about it. You know, my wedding pictures were shot by Joseph Radhik.
Uh,
The celebrity photographer that you talk about, I kind of spotted him through Flickr years ago. I knew that he'll have something good in
yeah.
future. um, uh,
I wish. Yeah, but it's wild, man. I'm telling you, in the first, I did not know. I did not anticipate this. At no point in my career did I write down on a piece of paper ki I will be a celebrity wedding photographer. I just wanted to do wedding photos. Today we are what we are due to serendipity and divine intervention. Honestly,
And
yeah,
I'm sure a lot of hard work, I mean, a lot of blood and sweat goes into making something like this possible.
that it has.
We'll now, speaking of which, there are a lot of people who want to make it in this profession, and I want to talk about the
Mm,
new course that you have come out with. But before that, I want to ask you, because you travel a lot, shoot weddings and other things all over the world. Tell me three most beautiful wedding destinations that you have found. or the one that you have liked?
Okay. I'll start with the most accessible. It may seem like the most obvious, but I really think it's India's own jewel, right? I really love Udaipur. Irrespective of how mainstream it is, I genuinely love it because I don't think you've really experienced Indian opulence till you take a boat ride in the Pichola, right? At night, ideally at 2 a.m. Okay, so it's quite magical. There's something about it. I keep going back to it. I have shot I mean, the most number of weddings I've shot is there, honestly. But I'm not tired of it. Every time I go back, I see a new frame. Every time I go back, I'm finding new light, and I think that's fine. And it's, as I said, it's the most accessible because it's right around the corner. Correct. The rest are, we have shot weddings at mind blowing places and around the world. I mean, this is gonna be a tough one to answer. I shot a sunset wedding of the east coast of sunrise wedding of the east coast of Seychelles, where the sun rose between these hills, and we were literally in a, we were in a little like a piece of land which is jutting out into the water. We are surrounded by water. It is mind blowing. Seychelles is just incredible. It's very unique in its own way. A good alternative to Seychelles is Mauritius. It has much bigger venues, all of that jazz. Within India, though, I know I've already stated Udaipur, right? But there's a lot of other Rajasthani properties that you can look at. I mean, places like Jaisalmer and Jodhpur. And I'm assuming that there's a bride out there listening to this, so I'm actually giving some advice as well. Look beyond destinations. Okay, what I've realized is that destination weddings don't need to be about the city they're in, but could just be about a beautiful property in that city. For example, if you're a bride from Bombay, you can look to get married in Hyderabad at the Falaknama. Okay, because the property itself is stunning, right? Right beside Falaknama is an even older place called Chaumahalla. You can go there as well, right? There are places which are hidden away within cities of ours, which are really truly heritage, and they're out there. I am not even going to list out the more exotic places, because I really want this to be advice to a bride who's probably looking at her wedding in 2023 or 2024 and thinking, "Ki, what else can we do?"
Right.
These are the places. And if you're having a really small wedding, okay, Kerala has a bunch of beautiful properties which I feel are very, very, very unexplored till now. So there's a whole bunch of properties which cater to weddings between 50 to 100 guests. Rare for India, but if you're blessed enough to have a wedding of that size, go for it.
We've spoken about what bride and groom and their family needs to take care of. Now let's talk about professionals, and especially because
Hmm.
your new course is out. Um,
Hmm.
all the photographers, though I as a photographer, I believe that a photo is made here inside a photographer's head, mostly,
Hmm.
not by the gear. But still, it's a thing that people always want to know: what is Joseph Radhik using while he's
Hmm.
shooting? Suppose you're shooting 15 days from now, if you're out shooting somewhere,
Hmm.
which camera or what cameras are you carrying on your shoulders?
Okay. I think before we get to what camera, I think the simpler thing is to understand the philosophy behind them. My idea has always been to keep it simple, stupid types. So I'm literally always using two cameras and three lenses. 10 years, that formula has not changed. Okay. The idea is to think less about the gear when I'm shooting and think more about the moment I'm shooting. Okay. Because the more you think about gear, the more you're missing the realness of the moment in front of you, because every photography is basically a bunch of decisions that you can take. Okay. So after the first three important ones, which is camera, lens, settings, right? There are a whole, like, there's a long list, right? You can get into this. It's never ending. So the moment you start thinking about that, you forget. I mean, you're unnecessarily occupying your mind too much about these things, right? So I would much rather that you are thinking more about the moment in front of you, right? So the three lenses that I shoot is, there's an ultra wide to capture drama. There is a mid somewhere between a 35 and a 50. Okay. And then there is a tele. Okay, the tele lens is basically your 85 mm and no longer than that. The reason, again, the philosophy is very simple. We like to be in the moment, so we don't shoot with those long white lenses that you see, 70 to 200, all of that. So as a nerd, Tarun, you would understand it, but like for the average viewer today, the lamba lenses is what we don't use, because we are always in the middle of the moment. Okay, so there's an old saying in photography that if your photos are not interesting, you just need to get close. Okay, that's it. So we are in close. We are always photographing from the POV, from the point of view of the guest at a wedding. Okay, we're in the action, never away from the action. Okay, so that's number one. What am I using today? Today I'm using a Sony Alpha 1. I will shamelessly tell you it is the most expensive camera that Sony makes. I'm using it because I can. Okay, because as much as I love wedding photography, I'm also a major photography nerd. So I like messing with new gear. My second camera is more important though. It's the A7 Mark IV, which is a lot more accessible to a young photographer today, right? We also use something called an A7 M3, which is even cheaper, and you can just go out, and that should be your first wedding photography camera, I believe. The rest of my lenses are, as I said, there's an ultra wide, there's a 16 to 20 there's a wide, and there's a tele. That's it. It's a very simple kit. It never changes. It literally been in the same bag for the last 6.5 years. The camera keeps changing, right? Because Sony keeps releasing new cameras like iPhones. But apart from that, that's what I use. I love Sony only because of the engineering innovation that they're able to pull out from these cameras, right? So I do endorse Sony, but I do organically love the product as well. Yeah,
I was watching a YouTube video of Adorama. It's a New York-based gear.
correct. Yeah.
So a street photographer was telling the cameras that he likes, and then he went
Hmm.
on to list out at least 10 different models, starting from Leica to all these expensive ones. But he has commented under that video that I'm going to show this video to my wife, that why we don't have
Hmm.
enough money.
No, okay, there's a funny thing I realized. Okay, I think there are people who love photography and people who love cameras. They're different people. Okay, there is no tags here I want to put. I don't want to say that the person who loves photography is a photographer, right? There'll be people in between as well. But that's the fact. So photography is a very interesting hobby because one of the few things where you're so obsessed with the end result. It's a lot like cars, right? You can love cars, but you don't need to be a rally driver to
Yeah,
love cars,
yeah,
right?
right,
You can love rally driving, but you don't need to love cars,
right.
right? So there is that as well. You can be an F1 racer, but garpe you can be driving a simple, like a Suzuki type situation, right?
Right.
So there is all of that. So it's exactly like that. There are a lot of photographers who genuinely don't know anything about cameras. And there are a lot of photography nerds or camera nerds who genuinely don't know anything about photography. So finding balance between the two will be your greatest route to success, I think, in
Yeah,
this madness.
yeah.
Yeah.
So speaking of route to success,
Hmm.
this wedding photography course that you're doing with the designers class, how did the idea
Hmm.
come about? And if somebody enrolls for it, what all are they going to get?
Excellent. So the designers class is actually it's founded by a couple of friends of mine, Samarth and Adish. So my main thing here was for the longest time I have tried to do workshops, okay, in person, and each of those workshops is limited to 20 to 30 people, maybe 2 or 3 times a year at most. Okay, and it's during the lockdown that I realized the power of distance learning, especially if you are an enthusiast for the craft. Okay, so if you're truly interested in the craft, you will shut down all distractions and you will sit and you'll learn something irrespective of where in the world it's coming from.
Mm.
Okay, we have seen that enough, correct? So that's what I expect from my students, that's what I expect from the people buying this course on designers class as well, that you will treat this seriously, like it's a class and not like it's a Netflix show that you can see it, and then say that, oh boy, I didn't learn anything. One of the major things that I learned during the lockdown was that you learn more by seeing shorter things 10 times than seeing a longer 10 times class once.
Mm.
That's the truth of it. It's like, and I learned this from cooking, honestly. Cooking recipes, I would see them 10, 15 times, get some guts in me to go into the kitchen and actually make something, correct? So the idea with what I've put up on designers class also is to create these easily relatable, right? Free of jargon, right? Because if you want to learn the nerd things about photography, you have YouTube. The internet is full of it. This is a real life understanding of what wedding photography is from someone who's been doing this for 12 years. And it's a very honest thing because I don't feel like you should hold back anything in these kind of sessions, because the more I share, the more I learn about what I don't know. Okay, so the course that I have with designers class, uh, its code name was actually All of Me, because it's literally me just putting everything out there. Uh, you will learn what is the philosophy behind stories and our approach to wedding photography. That is number one. How we treat clients and what our final deliverable for photos, how does it look like? That's number one. Number two, you will learn how to photograph real moments. Okay, how to really blend in, what is the kind of gear that we need to use, what are the kind of settings we use, and all the little minutiae behind that. Okay, number three, you will learn, and this is possibly the, the tougher thing, is how we simplify portraits. Most of us are not really good with posing people, right? So how do we simplify portraits? There is a simple process that we follow at stories. It's all there. As much as it's about, I think it's about 5 hours plus of video content that's out there. It's a lot of learning, right? But it's been made to ensure that that 5 hours can be 50 hours, right? I want you to watch it multiple times, take down the real minutiae. And really, I mean, if you're starting off today, it can be a huge thing. If you've already spent 5 or 10 years in the craft, it's a great way to relook and ask new questions of what you've been doing. So it's relevant even to the experience. It's not just for the beginner. And it's the first time I'm doing something like this. So I'm very excited. What we are doing at the designers class is also giving an approach for all the participants to also catch me live. So if you sign up, you will have a chance to meet me live on Zoom like this, talk to them, and just, and just figure out doubts and clarifications in a much more informal setting. That's
Mm.
the way we're looking at it. Yeah.
Wow. Uh, it's beautiful. Apart from this, is there anything you want to say to anyone who wants to make a career in photography? Any recommendations, study material, books, resources that you want to share?
Excellent. Firstly, obviously, sign up for my course. But no, but seriously though, what I suggest is that build a curriculum. Okay. I think we all studied at. I mean, bare minimum, we went to undergrad. We may have dropped out of it, right? But at the beginning of engineering, we would get this one little pink book here. Okay, which was like this. Every year, it'll show you what all you're going to learn.
Mm.
Okay. The problem with going on YouTube is, or the internet is, it's limitless. Okay, because of which there is so much information that you don't get any information because you are so confused. So instead of going from beginner to advanced, you start off at advanced and you never learn the foundation, correct? So I think my biggest cheat code when I started as a wedding photographer is I had 9.5 years of pure photography behind me. So my foundation was set when it comes to cameras. Today I find a lot of people who are just picking up the camera today, say in November early, and they'd be shooting a wedding by December. Okay, and that's a problem because you are being hired for a professional service,
Yeah.
correct? Somebody's going to rely on you, number one. Number two, you are relying on them to give a great testimonial to their friends to hire you again. That's all you need. Wedding photography is like growing a plant. Okay, you take one seed and you give it a lot of love, it'll come. It's
Mm.
not like we don't have farmhouses where we can throw seeds and hope that something will flower. No, it's not like, so it's not the social media game. It's just getting one client and making the most of it. So build the foundation is what I recommend to every young photographer. Get really good at what you're doing. Okay. Learn the craft, learn the skill. And honestly, just like I said, for brides, look beyond Instagram for photographers as well. Dive into books, dive into classes like these, which are available, which are not so easily available, which are not obvious, right? Yeah, and you will learn the core aspects of everything we do. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. Superb.
Thank you
Wonderful.
so much, Tarun.
Yeah. Whenever you're in Pune next, we'll catch up and probably we'll do a
Definitely.
interview here in the studios.
Yeah, definitely, man. Thank you so much, though. Thank you so much for having me.